I think it's Lenin who has the quote that the capitalists will sell us the rope that we will hang them with, and I think the Christian Church has given the West the rope that they intend to hang us with, because we've provided a sense of freedom, of opportunity, of not being meddled with by government entities or church entities that act like the government, and so I think not learning from the mistakes of the past as well allows us to continue to give over territory that is God's.
Yes.
From the church's standpoint,
Well,
we read about Israel and we go, "Oh, why are they doing this again?" And then I just always have to remember, I am Israel in that. I'm always
yes.
Israel. I'm always the negative parts of the church because I'm the one that's always doing those things as well.
Well, it's interesting you say that because how many times are they told, remember what God has done for you, right? You want to know where progressives almost always start infiltrating, right? If you're starting a seminary, you're starting a school, where do the progressives almost always show up first to infiltrate, right? I went to Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and they're like, we're very proud of our very orthodox theology. And they're right. I could not find any problems with their theology. But I took their church history class, and let me tell you, the progressives are already present. Why? Because they don't slip in through the head. They don't come at you from the head. They don't come at you straight on. They don't come at you in the theology departments. They don't come at you first, right from the beginning. They come in almost always through the history departments. Are you sure about that? Look at the Communist Manifesto. What was it that Hegel and Marx were doing? They were rewriting history to say that it was an entirely worldwide battle of resources by the capitalist, right? That has always been their playbook.
I mean, that's 1984.
History.
That's what Wilson was doing.
Exactly. They are always going, hey, history, history, history. We think church history doesn't matter. One of the reasons as a society we don't care about history anymore is because they've been so successful. The Marxists rewrote history and got us to not care about history. When I lived in China, they had no clue about their history. They used to throw parties on top of the Great Wall and destroy it. There are tons of pieces of the Great Wall that were completely just crushed forever, lost to history, because the people were taught not to care and not to like their own history that is a communist ploy from day one, because they're trying to get you away from this idea of any kind of national identity so they can control you and move you in the direction they want you to go in. And so many Christians don't think church history matter because they have agreed to the same terms as the enemy. And then they go out there and they fight the biblical and cultural battles, and they wonder why they feel so alone and why they're getting pushed on. It's because you've already embraced the wrong footing, that history does not matter. You are just one part of a large picture of God's church throughout history. Fight your battles today. Well, someday maybe you will be written about and remembered as well, but don't think for a second that you are better than history. There is a reason the progressives know where to start. They start in the literature departments because they want to control the stories, and they start in the history departments because the story of history needs to be written under their perspective, because at the end, they always believe they will win. Of course, like the devil, they won't, but they believe they will.
And see, this is why I want to have you on, because you're just me from the history side of things. So I appreciate that. But let me quote you towards the end here, because you've summed up the kind of the fight the good fight. But let me quote you here at the end. It is a great testament during these dark days to know that God fulfilled his word through his church exactly as he said he would. God took great pains to tell the story of God's people, Israel. Do you think he has not seen his people moving since the days of Pentecost? Learn about the great works God's people has done. It will grow you. It will make you less ecumenical and firmer in the primary things that matter most. For you cannot help but see the need for courage and boldness when you look at God's faithful people through history. And so I'm going to ask you, where should we go for good church history? And let me answer my question first, because I want you to have the last word. But if you're looking to get a huge swath of intro people, especially for your kids, there's a great book series. There's two sections of it, and it's called the Lifeway series, or I'm sorry, the Light Keeper series, and it's 10 boys who use their talents, 10 girls who use their talents. There's two sets of them. There's 10 boys, 10 girls. I've reviewed them all because I was so smitten with them. They do just a great job of giving you a large number of people in a short amount of story on introducing you to these people who were important that we know about today, and that will encourage you and your walk as you learn about their struggles, their high points, their low points, what they did. George Washington Carver, and how he pretty much modernized the food production of our day to day is because of his Christianity. That's something that, oh, he's the peanut guy. No. Church history is repleted with these unknown facts because I went to a Catholic private school and then a public school, and the history there was taught from an American standpoint of today, where everything is gilded in either presidents or wars, and we can do so much better with God's history. So that's my answer. Where should we go for good church history?
Lightkeeper is actually going to be mine, and I was going to say the same thing because it is so important to get to the children. Look at the effort that the world puts to making martyrs and saints out of the civil rights and these different people, and then ask yourself, if these things aren't important, why are they working so hard to teach them the heroes that they want your children to grow up under and to look like? You have a great swath of heroes, and children love stories. They do. I'm sorry. Children, I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. They may not sit still as I read 2 Timothy 2:1-10 to them. That's great. It's a great letter of God. I'm not denying it's scripture, but they will sit still for a very long story about a person living adventures like David Livingstone, Henry and Stanley. That's the way God made them. Luckily, there are lots of stories in the Bible. We can tell them, but I'm also saying we need to teach them the stories of church history. Children dig stories, and the more you fill their minds with great stories of the things that God's people have done, you will always find that children just grow and grow and grow. It's a great way to help, anchor them. It's a great apologetic for children. Lightkeepers was going to be mine. Banner of Truth has so many good stuff. People always say, go to Ian Murray. He's wonderful. So there's so many different things. I can't point to just one. I mean, he has a book called Why Church History Matters, so you could read that one if you're not convinced after this episode of why you need to do it. And I've read that one. It's 30 pages, really short, but easy to read. It's $2, so you can read it as a PDF in an hour. But I mean, there's so many good books on Banner of Truth. I think they're probably one of the best Christian publishers of church history, in my opinion. And if you're hearing all this and going, I need to go get a 2,000-page church history volume part 1. No, don't do that. That's the opposite approach you should have. Find a person who interests you and read maybe a short biography on him or her, and then go and read some more. I find that the best way to learn church history is through the biographies, and I would even say maybe don't necessarily jump on the big names. Don't maybe Dietrich Bonhoeffer or C.S. Lewis or some of those gigantic names that people always rush to aren't the best ones. Find ones with, I think, interesting stories that can delve you into a time period and see how this person interacted in it, and then learn some more like that. I think, personally speaking, I have learned so much more learning history through biographies than giant systematic historical whatevers, or what is it, historic systematic theology or something like that, where you're studying theology through history. And I'm like, yikes. I mean, it's very important, but also, that's the worst way to introduce somebody to history, because it's going to be so much tougher for them to enjoy. Biographies and stories are just so much more exciting, in my opinion. And I think it's why, for our listeners, so many people message us all the time. I was so encouraged. Wow, I never knew the story of Lilias Trotter, of Gladys Aylward. That I can't wait for the next episode, because these people's faiths inspire me. And I think that we need to get back to a place where biographies of Christians are just off the tip of our tongues and we're just ready to go. And of course, if I could be so humble as to recommend Revived Studios, I think Revived Thoughts, Revived Radio, Mars Missionaries, Revived Devos, there's something for everybody, and you can find something that you enjoy in our programs. I absolutely hope you do.
Thanks for nerding out on history with me, and I know probably at some point you get sick and tired of history, but this was a lot of fun for me, and it scratched my geek itch a lot. I've been reading history with my girls, and it's amazing how much I'll read a story from them and get inspired to go, Alfred the Great, I've never heard of him, and read an entire biography of him and go, wow, okay, that story probably didn't happen, but what he did to curtail the Viking invasion was amazing, and all these things that pinpoint, there's more to the story of history than just here's the Viking invasion, here's the Viking end invasion. Things happened in between. The governments were involved, and that's it. It's amazing how often the individual matters in that, and we see that in church history, in the Bible as well. It's always, here's this army standing against this army, and here comes this shepherd boy that no one cares about bringing his brother's food, and guess what? He ends up becoming the once and future king. So thanks for coming. Thanks for talking about this. How important it is for us to know, and keep having me on to read sermons for you.
Absolutely. Well, no, it's funny. It's actually a great ending statement. It's like, man, look at what God used to do with one person. It's like, look what God is still doing. So many times the atheist or whatever will be like, oh, what, 2,000 years ago, God said X, Y. Well, where's he been this whole time? Like ending slavery and fighting eugenics and doing all these great things through his church. He's been doing it all along the whole way through. He's not gone anywhere. And Patrick, you would maybe hopefully not ruin and delete this part out of your episode. But I want to tell everyone, Patrick is an amazing human. He's a wonderful person. He has kindly and multiple times helped my family and I out through his support of our work overseas. He may not, he may be humble and may not want to tell you this, but we have been very, very, very grateful for his support. He's more than just somebody who says he loves God. He's more than just somebody who runs a good podcast. There are plenty of people doing that, and there are plenty of kind of snakes out there in the podcasting world. Patrick's not one of them. He's a very good person who's financially helped us out at different times too. And so I wanted to make sure that I said before I left, like, we have deeply appreciated those moments. You have no idea how you probably helped us throughout this whole time. And you're more than just a guy who talks the talk or is out there tweeting the tweets, but you actually, when no one's looking, you do it, if that's what I'm saying. You're living it out, and you are, you're doing exactly what I think God has called you to do. So I want to thank you for that, and tell everyone who's listening, like, Patrick is definitely the real deal.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. It's only my pleasure, and it's only by the grace of God that I have the heart that I do, and let God reform it even more. So thank you again for coming out. Thanks for spending a large part of your night, my morning, and I'll see you out there again. So thanks again.